In fact, before they gave independence to African countries, they compelled them to sign a treaty for the continuation of colonization. The full colonization of all African people was decided and piloted from the table of the Berlin Conference of 1884 to 1885, which was supervised by Otto von Bismarck. During colonial imperialism, African people were treated as slaves in their own motherland. In the British colonies, the British built concentration camps like Adolf Hitler in Germany, where Africans who refused to work in British factories were beaten mercilessly and in some cases killed and buried. In the French colonies, for instance, the colonial policy of assimilation was introduced, where Africans were made to embrace the lifestyle of the French people, and those Africans who refused to abandon their African culture for the French culture were taken to rural areas where they were ruthlessly molested, humiliated, and put into hard labor without payment. The fact is that the French colonial policy of assimilation was so determined to eradicate and totally erase African culture from the life of Africans. This is due to the belief in the superiority of the French culture over the inferiority of the African culture. Africans worked for their colonial masters as they were flogged and beaten by the white men with tears in their eyes. The colonial companies paid the colonial government to arrest Africans who don't want to produce raw materials for the European company. Even when they started giving independence to African countries, the colonial masters were nonchalant and reluctant to leave the independent colonies. When Nigeria gained independence in 1960, the Queen of England was still the Nigerian head of state. It was in 1963 the Queen of England finally left the political and governmental affairs to Nigerians, which marked the Nigerian First Republic. Before leaving, she invited some key political heads of Nigerian politics, especially during the First Republic, like Tafawa Balewa, S.L. Akintola, and Nnamdi Azikiwe, to England and offered them a cup of tea. In that morning breakfast in Buckingham Palace, they signed treaties of protecting the multinational corporations and companies owned by their former colonial masters that are residing in Nigeria. The fact is that these companies have been exploiting the resources of Nigeria, and the Nigerian government are making laws to protect them. Till today, the colonial masters are still exploiting African countries because of the agreements the indigenous leaders went into with their former colonial masters. Late Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana in 1965 argued bitterly that African countries are only independent on the world map as their economy is still molested, exploited, and abused by their former slave masters.